trails and he's going to identify each one of the hardwood trees.
Right? So here we have a striped maple. These leaves get pretty large pretty quick, and they have 3 really big lobes. It's called a striped maple because if you look at the bark, it's striped up and down for the whole tree. This is a sugar maple. These have 5 defined lobes, and this is also the leaf you'll find on the Canadian flag. And these trees get pretty big, and they're also the ones you mainly use for maple syrup. This is a red maple. In terms of bark, there's not really much differences between the 3. But on a red maple, we have 3 primary lobes and 2 smaller ones at the bottom. You can tell it's different from a striped maple because a striped maple doesn't have these 2 smaller lobes. This right here is a white ash tree. If you look at their leaves, if you want to get real technical, this whole thing is the leaf structure, and each of these little leaves is a leaflet. All of these leaflets will be about the same size on a white ash tree, but on a black ash, the lower leaves will be smaller. And if you look at the bark, it sort of has wavy ridges that you can kind of break off. And this one right here is a black ash. If you look at this one's leaves, like I said, the lower ones are a lot smaller than the taller ones as they get higher up the leaf. If you look at this one's bark, it still kind of has those wavy ridges, but these pieces you can break off a lot easier, and they kind of have like a spongy texture to them. Here we have a beech tree, but not like the ocean. These leaves are pretty big ovulate leaves with very sparse teeth along the side. If you look really close, there's really small hairs along the side of the leaf. If you look at the bark, it's really smooth, and if it's affected by a certain disease, it'll get these cankers right here. Some trees are worse than others, and some are completely immune. Here we have a yellow birch. Their leaves are kind of similar to beech leaves, except they have more teeth and they don't have the very small hairs on the edges. If you look at the bark, it sort of peels like a white birch would, except it kind of has a yellowish tinge to it. This is a white birch. If you look at their leaves, they're sort of like a tall, triangular sort of shape, and their teeth all the way around the edge of the leaf. If you look at their bark, it is very white, hence the name, and it peels a lot, more than any other species of birch. Here we have a trembling aspen. These are called trembling aspens because the stem of the leaf is flat and makes it wave around in the wind like it's trembling. If you look at the bark, usually the best way to identify a poplar is these rusty ridges. It's almost like an orange color in the cracks of the bark. This is our second poplar species, the large-tooth aspen. It's really similar to the trembling aspen with their ridged bark and almost rusty color in the ridges. But if you look at the leaf compared to a trembling aspen, it has large teeth, just like the name would suggest. And here we have a couple butternut trees. And you probably know these trees because they're endangered and very rare. They're best found around here. And the reason I don't have any leaves for these is because since they're so rare, they're all really old and you can't really find any on the ground, so I couldn't get my hands on any leaves. These right here are basswood trees. They're another tree that's pretty uncommon around here and is also pretty interesting. If you look at their leaves, they get pretty big once they're full grown, and if you look at how they're shaped, this side will always dip lower than this side. They're asymmetrical at the bottom. They're really round, have lots of teeth around the edges, and come to a singular point. Look at their bark. At this size, they almost look just like a beech tree. They're really smooth and light colored with some white spots. Here we have an ironwood tree. This is another pretty uncommon tree that you mostly find here in the preserve. And if you look at the leaves, they look really similar to a yellow birch or a beech tree, but you probably can't see in the video because it's too small. But if you look at the bottom of the leaf where it attaches to the stem, one side will dip lower than the other. It appears asymmetrical at the bottom of the leaf. If you look at the bark, it's almost like a black ash bark where you can kind of peel spongy pieces off, but it has a different kind of texture where it's kind of like flakes rather than ridges. Okay, this here is another tree where I'm pretty certain from what I've seen it only really grows to this size around here. It's a black cherry. If you look at their leaves, they're pretty much like a perfect oval that are widest right in the middle. They come to a little tip. If you look at their bark, you would think they're almost like a spruce unless you look up and see the actual leaves, except they don't really break like a spruce would.
So that's the end of our video. Look out for these trees on the preserve and tell us if you find any. That's the video. Thanks, guys.